I'm Rajesh.
And I'm Richard.
You're listening to Humanity.
Being human in an age of artificial intelligence. This season, we're discussing how AI makes culture. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about using AI for collaboration. And to introduce this theme for the episode on collaboration, we thought it would be helpful to reintroduce a major concept from earlier in the season, which is the idea of affordances. This is an idea that was coined and elaborated by the psychologist JJ Gibson. The basic notion is one of visual perception, that when we're looking out at the world, that we see things, we see objects and surfaces in terms of what we can do with them, what we can do to them, what we can use them for, what kinds of actions they afford. So if I see a surface that's maybe at knee height, I know that that surface affords sitting. That's something I can sit on, whether it's a chair or it's just a rock or a log or a slope that happens to be shaped that way. And other things like maybe a stick affords extending my arm. And that this is kind of a fundamental aspect of visual perception. That idea was elaborated on in the world of design by Don Norman in his book, The Design of Everyday Things. We're using this concept to think about artificial intelligence. What kinds of actions and abilities does AI afford? So just thinking at kind of the obvious example, clearly the new generative AI platforms afford the creation of text or images. But we're also trying to think about what other sort of more subtle affordances does it offer. And so today we'll be thinking about what kinds of affordances it may have for collaboration. Jess, do you have any thoughts about the communicative affordances of face-to-face speech?
Yeah, well before AI, well before any machines, we were talking to each other while facing each other. And in fact, that is still the most dominant form of conversation. And it really helps us, gauge what other people are feeling. So we get affordances from facial gestures. We get affordances from turn taking. So I stop and you start. We get affordances from questioning and answering. So that back and forth and imaginative play of various kinds. So face-to-face interaction, which is only partly linguistic because so much of it is about bodily state and gesture, is a great way to communicate and collaborate because we are fully engaged in it as embodied creatures. ChatGPT is, of course, maximally disembodied. So most of the things that we do when we are communicating don't happen with ChatGPT.
Right. The ChatGPT it's a text bot, so it's only linguistic, whereas the face-to-face, putting our faces toward each other orients all of our senses, to pick up on one another. It's certainly the visual senses, seeing, like you mentioned, the facial expressions, the bodily postures, all this kind of information that we get that's paralinguistic. And it's part of the act of communication, but it's not part of language.
Though print and 2D representation of text on paper does afford certain things that back and forth speech doesn't, right? Because I can go back to what I read, I can go to an index and look up things. So those are all affordances of the printed word that are not there in everyday speech, in face-to-face speech. But maybe AI is getting us closer to some combination of what print does and what face-to-face speech does. And we've all used software like Google Docs where you collaborate with others, both sometimes in real time and sometimes asynchronously. Do you actually like doing that? Like, do you like working on a joint document with other people, or does it feel like an interruption of your own thought processes?
I'm really not a big user of shared documents like Google Docs. Usually, I'll put it this way, I'm almost never the person who initiates using shared documents. I think we've used them a little bit, and that came from you, not from me. I like the idea of it. Somehow it doesn't work great for me. How about you? What's your experience?
I like it for certain things, especially if it's in different media and the collaborators are not necessarily contributing the same medium, right? So if I am writing text and someone else is contributing pictures, then it actually works quite well because I can say something, then they can draw something, and I can say something else which responds to their drawing. Right? It feels
Yeah.
like something that would be hard to do otherwise.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or maybe we could add asynchronous collaboration. Let's say you're working with people who are in different time zones, or for whatever reason, you can't have a synchronous collaboration. And so there you don't have the ability to do something like face-to-face collaboration or conversation, right? It has to be through something like through a text or other medium like that.
Today, we're going to do synchronous collaboration and not just amongst ourselves, but with AI in the picture. So we have been playing with this platform called Team GPT that allows multiple people to interrogate ChatGPT at the same time.
All right.
Okay, moving over to Team GPT. How will AI make collaboration easier?
So we're on Team GPT. I should add this is not sponsored. And I'm waiting for that. I haven't seen your message pop up,
Uh-huh.
but maybe that'll come up when ChatGPT responds. Oh, here we are. Here we are. It just appeared.
Okay.
Okay. How will AI make collaboration easier? And Team GPT responded, AI can make collaboration easier in numerous ways. Number one, efficient communication. Number two, task management. Number three, decision making. Number four, conflict resolution. Also, training and development, meeting scheduling, document collaboration, and knowledge management. I'm just going to pull out from the first of those sort of bullet points, efficient communication, and it added further, AI chatbots can automate and simplify communication, allowing team members to focus on more important tasks. Some AI systems can even translate languages in real time, making it easier for international teams to collaborate.
Are you satisfied with this answer? Or do you want to ask more questions?
I find like with a lot of chatbot interactions that the first question, it's not very much that's interesting. So I'd be interested to drill down further into the efficient communication and maybe just sort of a simple question of tell us more about how AI can assist with efficient communication. All right, it is generating.
And soon it will reveal the truth. I kind of agree with you, though, that having ChatGPT, like it's almost like you have to throw away the first few responses to get to something interesting.
It tends to give very open-ended and bland responses, and you have to specify what about, what exactly is it that you're looking for. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that it doesn't have some of the paralinguistic cues that a human conversation partner would have, or just the personal history. Like let's say if I ask you a question like this, you have a whole lot of information, not just sort of to respond to that question generically, but you have information about me and what my concerns are and what's the history of our interactions. That interacting with ChatGPT to me reminds me of speaking to someone who I've never met before. Maybe I don't even know what they look like or what they sound like, and maybe I'm just going to give a real sort of bland, generic response and then kind of take it from there.
I can imagine a skit in the future where people go to a party and just have ChatGPT do all the small talk. And it feels really boring,
Wait until you get an interesting response and then.
So here's what ChatGPT says about your question, Richard. It says AI can assist with efficient communication in various ways. Number one, automating responses. Number two, real time translation. Number three, sentiment analysis. Number four, voice assistance. Number five, email filtering. Number six, predictive text and autocorrect. Number seven, speech recognition. And number eight, personalized communication. I gotta say that none of these feel like something that I wouldn't want to do myself. Maybe automating responses, I can let a chatbot do that for me. But the and real-time translation, that could be useful for some people.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask a further question. Um,
The third one, I just want to the third comment, sentiment analysis, that AI can analyze text to understand the sentiment behind the message. To me, this seems like something that it's really not as good as a human at. Like I would never
yeah,
ask the chatbot for understanding connotations or sentiment.
unless you are not a native speaker and you want to write in a certain tone.
Yeah.
So, which does make me think that the real-time translation or like a big immediate value in collaboration might be between people who have to write a document in the one language, possibly English, but are not necessarily native speakers of that language and therefore could use AI for making their output better.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a further question. I'm going to say, what use do I have of predictive text? We have been used to predictive text from Google from a long time ago. Like, you would type down a search query and it would just autocomplete it. So this is what Team GPT says about predictive text. It speeds up typing, reduces typos, contextual suggestions, language learning, efficiency on small devices, autocomplete longer phrases, personalization. What it does make me think is that if I get good at it, at least for a certain kind of professional communication, I might just want to type in the first few words of a sentence I want to write. And if it is quick at autocompleting it and it's good at replicating how I would do it, then I could go from typing 20 words to three or four, and that might be efficient. There would have to be a pretty big mental shift on my part to want ChatGPT to do that for me.
Certainly, the autocomplete that we have, or that I have access to, and either sending text messages or writing Gmails or things along those lines, they're not anywhere good. I mean, it can't do more than sort of complete a simple phrase.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I
But
think though, if I were someone who sent a lot of messages that were fairly routine, if I were in customer support or something like that, or rather I were running a division of customer support, then I'm sure I'm already using predictive responses, predictive text quite heavily.
yeah, maybe a certain kind of semi-administrative use of text, right? Whether for support, for technical assistance, for coordinating meetings, that kind of stuff can be done better by humans working with AI than by humans alone, right? It's boring, and so if ChatGPT takes away some of that repetitive boredom, why not?
Yeah. Now, thinking about questions that we could pose to Team GPT, a lot of the affordances that I see in face-to-face communication are really just in collaboration generally, right? We
Hmm.
could kind of take a step back and say, regardless of the medium of collaboration, that part of what we want is this ability to remix ideas, right? One of
Hmm.
us, maybe you pose some idea, and then maybe I just state it back in my own words, but that lets you hear it differently, and then you have
Hmm.
a different idea about it, and then I take it another direction that you wouldn't have thought to. This is sort of, let's say, for brainstorming or for generating ideas. This is one of the key ways that we
Yeah.
things that we use collaboration for. I'm just going to type into the chatbot here, how can AI assist with brainstorming?
I'm still waiting to see what it says.
Okay, it should have come out there for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. AI can assist with brainstorming in several ways. Number one, idea generation. Number two, facilitating virtual brainstorming. Number three, pattern recognition. Number four, removing bias. Number five, organizing ideas. Number six, visualizing concepts. Number seven, predictive analysis. So I'm just going to read one of those that I feel could be, wasn't something that I had thought about. So facilitating virtual brainstorming. AI-powered collaboration tools can help teams brainstorm seamlessly in a virtual environment. These tools can transcribe ideas in real time, recognize voice inputs from diverse languages, and translate them into a unified language to facilitate understanding among global teams. I have to say, not the most enlightening explanation of what virtual brainstorming would be, but I kind of get it. It's like, okay, we are all saying whatever we are saying, but it is working tirelessly behind the scenes to integrate our inputs. Maybe that's what, right? Some of the advantages that AI might provide are in summarizing or curating or in aggregating inputs that have otherwise come asynchronously, something that would be impossible for human brains to do on their own, but a machine that can aggregate a group's collective understanding and make it available for future queries. That feels like an obvious affordance of AI-enabled collaboration.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind having an AI, some sort of automated note-taking that didn't just transcribe a conversation but summarized its main points. I was in a meeting earlier today, and it was a faculty meeting where we rotate who's the secretary, for the day, and today was my day, and in that kind of meeting, it's fine for someone to devote themselves to writing out the notes, and I think it makes sense. But there are a lot of other meetings, like let's say you and I are chatting about the podcast or something. We're probably not going to formalize it in that way, but it might be nice to have an output.
We could try it. In fact, in one of our next experiments, because Zoom has that AI summary feature. So
is that right?
Yeah, it does. So and in fact, I just turned that on in my account. So it'll automatically transcribe and then send you a summary of the transcript if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It was interesting for me, using the Team GPT. I should say that we had almost no experience with it before, recording today's podcast, and it's probably the kind of thing that you would need to feel your way into, just like you do with a one-on-one text chatbot. But something I was thinking about as we were doing it is that really the affordances of a regular chatbot are very similar to that of a conversation partner, of a collaborator. Mm-hmm. Right? You can pose an idea and the chatbot kind of spits it back to you. It's almost like a therapist, sort of repeating your words back to you, but in a different way, and that helps you hear them differently, and that allows new ideas to be generated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if we were somewhat more agile with the use of Team GPT, we could even say, respond to me like you were one of my students, or, like play a certain role in that conversational partner position.
Right. Like a lot of meetings, might have not a lot, but it always seemed like a good idea to me. But I've never been in a meeting, actually, I should say now, that has a designated devil's advocate. But you could have maybe if you're using an AI facilitated collaboration, you could have an AI devil's advocate.
I actually think that would be very helpful because we are very bad devil's advocates.
It's really hard to play that role because of the social norms and forces that push people toward groupthink, make it hard to be the person who's playing that role. But the AI wouldn't care, right? If you tell it to do that, it's going to do that.
I feel that we are, again, too early to detect whether this is going to be fantastic or useful or a distraction. But one thing that you said, the devil's advocate and maybe summarizing conversations feels useful.
I'm curious if you've have had experience trying to use a chatbot explicitly, either a chatbot or image generation, as a kind of co-collaborator, as a way of realizing ideas that you have, let's say in a brainstorming session, maybe just by yourself.
Image, definitely. It feels like when I am using Mid-Journey to even create a slideshow, it's invariably led me to think differently than if I had just written that as text.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Seeing it realized as images.
Seeing it realized as images tells me how to flesh it out, right? Like what are the directions what are the affordances of the image that are giving me new directions to think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wonder whether using a chatbot, we talked in a previous episode about tending toward using commands to interact with the chatbot, but whether one might naturally gravitate toward more of a conversational style with the chatbot if you're using it for brainstorming or to sort of simulate a collaborator if you not give it commands but talk to it as a person.
I'm instinctively, for me, feeling like having an adversarial partner in the chatbot might be the best possible use of that. It would be potentially effective in pointing out flaws, and I would not be in the least bit offended. So, you know.
So I won't offer to point out the flaws in your thinking. Instead, I'll blame it on the chatbot.
There you go.
Future.
Exactly. Yeah. This again feels like an open landscape right now. We're just feeling our way through it. ChatGPT is playing really almost as a way to prompt our thinking, right? It's not as if it's solving a specific problem for us, but early days are probably like that. Richard, any final thoughts?
It's funny because we started the episode thinking about AI as a tool for collaboration, but I'm leaving the episode really thinking more about how could I use a chatbot or an image generator as a collaborator.
Uh-huh.
Right, to have a kind of an automated collaborator that could play different collaborative roles on command.
Yeah, I kind of agree that the 1:1 seems to be the most promising use case right now, rather than multiple people using AI at once. With that semi-promising thought, it is time to say bye.
Good talking to you, Rajesh.
Good talking to you, Richard. You've been listening to Humanity, being human in the age of artificial intelligence. Stay with us. Next week, we'll be back with We Don't Know What, because it's a surprise.